We are 48 hours into legal tampering, and now it is officially free agency. The Vikings have officially announced multiple moves, and there is still a long way to go. Where can they go? How much money do they have? What's the deal with Aaron Rodgers, Cooper Kupp, Sauce Gardner, trade Jordan Addison? There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and we're going to hash it all out here on the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. We are not sponsored by ayahuasca. I am Tyler Forness, and with me, as always, in the top of the corner is producer Dave. Dave, I think we have to start out talking about Aaron Rodgers, and I hate it. I think it's stupid. I also think it's nonsensical for the Minnesota Vikings to bring in Aaron Rodgers, and I'll kind of explain that. You and I have not really talked about this whole Aaron Rodgers thing because to my knowledge, you've kind of blown it off in the same way I have. What's your read on this whole situation? Because it's kind of baffling, not just on the surface, but in depth as well.
I believe that Aaron Rodgers is being Aaron Rodgers by not giving a definitive answer of where he wants to go. I think he wants to end his career in Minnesota. I don't like it. I don't want it. I think it's stupid. You're going to risk the 3 years of building a culture for what I perceive as a locker room cancer for somebody who looks to be washed. His abilities aren't as great as they once were. And yes, I hear, hey, take the GOAT, Tom Brady. He won a Super Bowl at 43. Tom Brady's a unicorn.
Yeah. Look, let's just be real. Aaron Rodgers ain't eating avocado ice cream. He's just not. They're different levels. Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He will be enshrined in Canton, Ohio very, very soon. And he had a fantastic career. Yeah. Multiple MVPs, multiple All-Pros, and a Super Bowl champion. But we're not talking about that version. We're talking about 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, post-torn Achilles. I can listen to an argument saying that, hey, the 2025 season would be better than 2024 because he will be 2 years post-surgery. And what we know with Achilles is when you have that injury, a torn Achilles tendon, being post-surgery 2 years is usually when you get back to what your normal is now. What is that normal for Aaron Rodgers? We don't know. But what we can do is try and project. It's not good. When
he left Green Bay, I was saying he was washed then. And then they drafted Jordan Love, and that perked him up and motivated him, right, to play well. And he got an extra few years. But did he do anything with him? Not really. Yes, he won a division. He owned the Chicago Bears, but no. And then he goes to New York. 4 plays in, first year, blown Achilles. Second year, he was a problem. Did they have a winning record? Did they get to the playoffs? And they had a defense. No. I think if it happens, it will be one of the stupidest moves by this franchise in decades. And that's taken a lot. Yeah, and I hope the decision makers are watching this and going with a lot of the fans that say no. Now, we got people here, Chris Thompson. Are we sure 100% that McCarthy's ready to start?
No. It's a tough one because with young guys like that, you really don't know until you get to see it. And it's like one of those things when you come out of college and you apply for jobs. Well, you need experience to get these jobs. Well, you can't get experience without getting the job. So it's kind of that weird catch-22 where you think they're ready, but you're not going to know for sure until you actually see it happen with your own eyes. And when it comes to McCarthy, you just have to give it a shot. You have to, say, hey, we're just going to give you the reins. We're just going to let it ride. And I think that based on how things were trending, based on how the beat was talking, how practices were going in training camp last year, he would have been the guy. And I know people don't really want a Rodgers debate, and we're not really going to have a debate. Neither one of us want him. But I think it's important to talk about the context of which it's being discussed. I think Rodgers is washed, and I don't think it's a good idea. I can understand the idea of, hey, we would like JJ McCarthy to sit one more year just because I think it would be better for him long term. I will listen to that argument, and I think it's a fair one. Jordan Love sat for 3 years. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Peyton Manning did not sit, but he's also a different kind of breed. And I said this leading into the draft and leading into training camp. Some guys can handle failure, an immense amount of it in their first year starting. Some guys can't. I can't tell you if McCarthy's that guy. You can't tell me if McCarthy's that guy. We can guess, but we have never met the man. We've never spent time with him. We don't know all of what that mental makeup and fortitude is. You have to be.
We know his past, and his past has demonstrated that. So that is it. Yeah. And there are people watching right now that are 100 or 1,000% for getting Aaron Rodgers. I'm not one of them. You're not one of them.
And I want to talk about because we have a lot of other fun stuff to get to.
Yeah, the reporting around thing. Freddie asked, how much would we pay him?
I would guess it'd be around $20 million. I don't think the Vikings would be willing to pay much more, especially because he's older. Guys like Drew Brees at the end of their career making around $20 million. And that was when the dollar amount for quarterbacks was significantly higher. I don't see a world like Tom Brady was only getting $25 million when he was with the Tampa Bay Bucks. He wasn't getting buku bucks, but he's still getting a lot. And Brady's a different breed, and it's really hard to make any contract comparisons because he was married to a woman that made 3 times as much as him on a yearly basis. Gisele Bündchen, like the penultimate, I think I butchered that word, but Victoria's Secret model. Penultimate, yeah, that's the word. I still blew it, but Victoria's Secret model, fashion guru. She is worth way more than Brady is. Now, obviously, they're divorced, and I believe she's remarried, or if she's not remarried, she's in a serious relationship with somebody else because she just had a baby. But when you have somebody making way more money than you, you can take less and not feel as bad about it because there is somebody else in the house that is bringing in a lot of money. That factors in. Aaron Rodgers, to my knowledge, does not have a significant other. He has had significant others in the past. We know Danica Patrick, Shailene Woodley, Olivia Munn, but he's never been married. And that can factor in. He and everybody else are going to be way more likely to chase dollars, where Brady didn't have to worry about that as much because there were still millions upon millions coming in. And it's just a different world. But what I want to talk about with Rodgers is the reporting surrounding him. It's very odd and very weird. And the people that are reporting it are not the normal people that we see getting Viking stuff. Tom Pelissero is not reporting that the Minnesota Vikings are interested in Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's an important one because Pelissero lives in Plymouth. He lives in this state. He is from here. He raises his kids here. He used to work for SKOL North AM 1500 before they shut down like their portion of the radio station. Now they just do syndicated stuff. Like, he used to cover the Vikings full time. He usually gets those kind of scoops. He hasn't talked once, I believe, about Aaron Rodgers to the Vikings. Ian Rappaport today said that Aaron Rodgers is deciding between the Steelers and the Giants. But Diana Rossini, who is a legitimate journalist, and she's very good. But then there's Mike Silver, who also writes for The Athletic. They're the ones that are saying that the Minnesota Vikings are still exploring that option. And I do think that reporting how inconsistent it is across the board and who's reporting that there's interest is very interesting and very intriguing. And I think reading between the tea leaves there can kind of help you deduct a little bit. I just find it interesting and fascinating. I've also been on record saying I don't like insiders to have like spout football opinions because so many people perceive them as fact. I don't want to hear Adam Schefter talk about how good the Lions offense is, because if he says something, people are going to take it as a report because media literacy, like that just is a general consensus. Not everybody is that way, but I don't like insiders being able to talk about opinions about football because it's misconstrued. So it's just very interesting, and keep an eye out and keep your ears and eyes wide open to see who's talking about what and why they're talking about it and who is giving them that information. Those are all factors. And it's just very, very interesting who is talking about it and who's not. But we're going to be done talking about Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers, but I thought it was important to talk about. Dave, this is going to be a little bit of a contentious point because you and I completely disagree here. And I think that's what makes this interesting. There was an uncredible rumor floating around social media yesterday that from a guy who claims to be a 4-time World Series of Poker champion. Now, if you know the World Series of Poker, there's more than just the main event, which is the one where you win like a couple million.
Yeah.
There are many side games where you can still win. All right. So this guy has won 4 of those side games, which is still incredibly impressive. And he was claiming, and he's also claiming that he was 7.5 out of his last 8 scoops. I don't know how you get the half. Maybe he was half right. Like, oh, this guy got traded, but it was to the wrong team kind of thing. But he said that the Vikings were in serious discussions with the Jets about trading for Sauce Gardner. And that idea, having Sauce Gardner in his defense would rule. But there's so many layers to that conversation. One of them was, well, what are you going to give up for him? Well, one of the names floated out was Jordan Addison. And before I give my opinion, Dave, I want to hear your argument of why you would trade Jordan Addison, because it wouldn't be 1-to-1. It'd be like Jordan Addison and a first for Sauce Gardner, maybe more. It's also worth noting that, I'll save that for my piece because I don't like it. I think it's dumb. And I wrote an article about it, azsports.com. You are for it though, Dave, and I would like to give you the floor and hear your opinion on it.
I would be for it for mainly the reason that finding a CB1 shutdown, a true one, an elite one that Sauce Gardner is, getting him on his rookie contract. This is the 4th year. He would have a 5th year extension, which will value around $20 million, 20.2 I saw estimated, is more valuable than a wide receiver 2 in the long run, especially when wide receivers can be found relatively easily, either through free agency or through the draft. Now, granted, this year may not be considered a stellar year, but there are some. Whereas a corner with the level skills of Sauce Gardner are not easily found. You're lucky if there's one a season coming out. I think it would be more beneficial for the Vikings to trade for Sauce and get rid of Jordan Addison, who's basically a wide receiver 1, but he plays with Justin Jefferson, so he's a wide receiver 2. It would get rid of the headache of the disciplinary issues with Jordan Addison that he's going to incur in the future, and it would cement our defense even more on the back end. I think it would be a no-brainer to me. I would do it. Now, I wouldn't do it for Addison and a 1, no. But Addison and probably something else, a pick swap or something, sure. But it's got to be, to me, it would make sense. You're getting rid of a possible headache that's easily replaceable, even though he's good. We'd miss Addison. Jordan Addison's been very, very good. He's a very good wide receiver. But the rarity of a shutdown corner like Sauce Gardner would outweigh it. That's why I would do that in a heartbeat.
So I get it. I get the appeal of having a Sauce Gardner. I get the understanding of, hey, we have an alpha CB1. I love having a lot of really good corners, and I've talked about it on the show before. To me, cornerback is a weak link system. I'd rather have a bunch of good guys than an alpha and some change. And one of the tough parts about having like that alpha, you have to pay him like the alpha. Once you acquire Sauce Gardner, that guy's getting a 25, 26, $27 million a year contract. Mm-hmm. And that becomes expensive. Can the Vikings afford it? Yes, but there are going to be different things that now you can't afford. And it's always a cost-benefit analysis. So when you trade for him, then you have to pay him. And that's where things get a little murky because you're now giving up assets to pay a premium asset. And that's not to say that Sauce Gardner is not worth that. I don't think that's my argument. I think if you have him, you pay him, and you feel really good about that. But I also don't think that you need to have an alpha corner. I think Byron Murphy Jr. can be your number one. And if you have a really good 2, a really good 3, like I would rather have 3 B to B plus corners than an A plus and a B minus. To me, that's more valuable where I have solidity across the board, especially with how the Vikings like to play. You don't have to be an elite corner. You just have to not be slow. You just have to not be like slow like Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore are. Where if they would have been playing in this defense at the age of 23, we would have been singing a lot different tune than the end of last year. I want guys who are consistent across the board. I want players who can do a lot of different things. And I think having a diverse cornerback room with youth and talent is more important than having the CB1. And second off, I also think trading Jordan Addison would be malpractice. And if you want to trade for Sauce Gardner, I would not include Addison. And to me, that's a non-starter. Because while we can look at the offense, be like, hey, this is Justin Jefferson's offense. This is all about Jefferson. Then you have TJ Hawkinson. Well, we saw Jefferson did have quite a few struggles without Addison opposite him in those games against the 49ers and the Texans. Now, it's not complete. Jefferson's still incredible, and he can beat those double and triple teams, and he can still find ways to impact the game. But if you have a guy like Addison and you have Hawkinson, that helps elevate and alleviate some of those things. Look at the first Bears game in Chicago. They sold out to stop Jefferson. Double, triple teams all game. He had like 4 catches for 40 yards. Addison over 100 yards. Hawkinson over 100 yards. Aaron Jones over 100 yards. You can do those kinds of things when you have people who can take advantage. And he's such a good route runner. Archetype-wise, play style-wise. One, I do not think Addison's as good as Jefferson. But they're very, very similar players in how they try to win, how they go about their business on the field. They are very technical route runners with explosiveness. They do not waste movements. They're able to use great body control when they sky to get the football. They play the same role. They play it a little bit differently. And obviously, you have Jefferson, who's just significantly better. He's arguably the best player in the NFL. Like, you can make that argument. But having Addison is so valuable because when they decide, hey, I'm just going to stop Jefferson, he can just whip your butt. And that was kind of the focus of my article. I just think he's become underrated. He has 204 targets in his career, 136 catches, 1,811 yards, and 19 touchdowns in 2 years. And he missed 2 games this year because of a high ankle sprain that he suffered in week 1. And that was after suffering a high ankle sprain 3 weeks prior in training camp. Then that joint practice with the Cleveland Browns. I think that Addison is too valuable to this team. And then there's these discussions, we're not going to resign him. You don't know that. We can pay Addison and Jefferson at the same time. And Hawkinson. You know why I know that? The Eagles are doing it. The Eagles are, no, Cincinnati wants to do it. They can't. They haven't figured it out yet. The Eagles are doing it while paying Jalen Hurts an average of $51 million a year and having, I believe, the highest paid offensive line in football. There's ways to do it. And we have the salary cap people. Drew Brees had a great quote. It is not my job to manage the cap. It is your job to pay me and figure it out. And you know what? We have guys who can figure it out. If Addison makes more legal mistakes down the line, I think there's a real discussion to be had about, hey, you can't extend this guy. I'm not going to say it's this to diminish what he did. He was an idiot with those 2 moving violations. He was an absolute idiot. But I think that's something that you can recover from and grow from because of the context of it. Thankfully, he didn't hurt anybody. Hopefully, he learns his lesson. But having those instances, it's definitely a stain on him. But we're not talking about other potentially like more dangerous and physical crimes. I think he can learn from it. I think you can help him grow from it, because at the end of the day, I don't even believe he's turned 23 yet. He's young. And you can help young people grow and evolve, because that's what happens. So, plus, like they'll be able to figure out a way to pay him. He is like the 6th or 7th best player on this football team. That's how good Jordan Addison is. The only guys who I believe are 100% better, you have Jefferson, Darrisaw, O'Neal, Jonathan Grenard, and that's the list. Those are the only ones who I can say without a shadow of a doubt are better than Jordan Addison. Maybe TJ Hawkinson.
Blake Cashman.
You can make the argument that Addison's better, and I think that's where I'm sitting. I only believe 4, maybe 5 guys that I can concretely say are better than Addison. He's really, really, really good at football, but he gets overshadowed by a multitude of other things, especially the guy playing opposite of him, and that is Justin Jefferson. Plus, my final point here, the biggest thing for me, Dave, why would you trade your number 2 wide receiver who's incredibly explosive, knows how to get open, when you're about to start a quarterback for the first time? Why would you get rid of him? And he's on a rookie contract. His cap hit's like $3.7 million. To me, that's organizational malpractice. And I think it's a different conversation about trading Addison versus trading for Sauce, and versus trading Addison for Sauce. Like they are different conversations. In a vacuum, trading for Sauce, I think you are. It's very good. Trading Addison for Sauce, I don't understand it. I think it's a bad move. And I truly believe that as good as Sauce is, the defense will only see marginal improvements, while the offense will see a deterioration far stronger than Sauce. Because, as you said yourself, Dave, it is easier to find those number 2 wide receivers. But I think Addison's a 1. He is just not asked to be a 1. He's not in a position to be a 1 because of the guy opposite of him. But I think he's going to end up being a 1 in this league because he's that good. Those guys aren't the hardest to find. But if you don't have one on the roster, giving him up for a cornerback who I think is only going to marginally improve your defense for where it's at right now. Like, you just fix the defensive line. Theoretically, you're getting interior pressure and you're getting exterior pressure too. Now, all of a sudden, you have a force of a pass rush. And the reason why the passing defense was so poor last year is 1, interior pressure, and 2, they had to throw a lot because you got up on teams so quickly and easily. Yards don't matter when it comes to like a lot of these metrics talking about defense anymore, because yards only tell you so much. And is Sauce Gardner really going to do better than whoever that much better that your CB2 is, that you're willing to take that kind of slide by losing Addison? To me, the answer is a flat out no. And that's kind of where I stand.
But if the opportunity presents itself, it may not present itself when Addison's, gone through 5 years here.
Sure, but if it presents itself now, I'm saying no. I'm not trading Addison for him. That is my stance, and I believe your stance is I'll take that. And there's plenty of other people who said, yeah, I'll take that too. But to me, it's nonsensical because of what you're doing to JJ McCarthy. You're making his job significantly harder when the whole point is to make his job as easy as possible while he adapts to the National Football League. Because listen, having him in the room last year, even though he didn't get to play, was huge for his development. But now he's going to have to play. And guess what? You're going to see growing pains. But those growing pains are not going to be as much as it would have been if he was a rookie, because he had a year. He had a year to learn. He had a year to ask questions. He had a year to absorb information and get to a point where McCarthy can feel comfortable like calling the offense. He can feel more comfortable with the playbook. Those elements matter when we're having these conversations. But at the end of the day, I genuinely don't think that it makes a ton of sense to like completely trade like Jordan Addison for Sauce. And look, this is just an unverified rumor, but it became a topic of discussion.
It's
And because of where
Sauce has commented on it.
Yeah. And because of where we're at with Jordan Addison and where, hey, we want to like make that Super Bowl run, I don't think Sauce is making enough of an impact for what you would lose with Addison. And to me, like hurting your quarterback doesn't make sense. I trust Brian Flores to get the most. I watched Isaiah Rodgers, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good football player. He's my favorite type of corner. Small, scrappy, just pardon my language, he's just a little spit fuck. That dude is scrappy. He is very similar to Mekhi Blackman in stature and how he plays. I love it. I love those kind of guys. And I think that's the archetype that I talked about this on Monday or Tuesday, I believe, where they want to target these guys. They want to target the smaller guys who are going to be feisty, who are going to attack the football, who are not going to be afraid of you. And even though he weighs 170 pounds, he doesn't get bullied. He only allowed 50% of targets to be caught, 18 to 36 for just 200 yards last year. Like he was good when the ball was in the air. Oh, and Dave, he had 6 passes batted down. 16.67% of all targets got batted down. 1 out of 6. That's just wild. Like I trust that he's going to be able to elevate the cornerback room enough to get good play versus trusting JJ McCarthy to throw to whoever. And I think reasonable minds can disagree. I know you and I disagree here, but I did think it was fun and a good exercise to kind of talk about because there's so many different layers to this conversation.
Hey, and the fans watching disagree too. And
that's okay.
A lot of it's on age range. I'm seeing, which I find fascinating.
Elaborate. What do you mean?
The older guys like me are going for Sauce.
Oh.
And the younger guys like you are going for Addison.
That's interesting. What's your read on that? Why do you think those who skew a little bit older in age are going for Sauce, and why those who are skewing younger are going for Addison? Do you have any read on that? Because
I think it's because we grew up where a shutdown corner was king.
Mm-hmm. I will say shutdown corners are significantly different than they were 10 years ago. They're even more different than they were 20 and 30 years ago.
Yeah, and receiving is different.
Mm-hmm.
The game, there's more throwing and stuff in it. It was great when you had great guys like Deion Sanders that would just intimidate the other team, and they'd shut it down, and they'd hand the ball off. That's the only way they could beat them. And they were a running geared team, and there was lesser passing then. Now there's more passing, but which to me makes it all the more important to have a good backup. Now, Sauce Gardner, who was the opposite side of him? Look,
DJ Reed.
DJ Reed went to the Lions.
Ugh.
DJ Reed did exceptionally well last year, but he had almost half as much targets as Sauce Gardner because they wouldn't throw to Sauce Gardner's side. You're shutting the field down in half with a guy of that caliber. That is a distinct advantage.
Yeah.
But
let's talk more about that backup quarterback situation, though, Dave, because I think that's an interesting one as we kind of wrap up the whole discussion about Jordan Addison, and we're done talking about Aaron Rodgers, thank God.
We got one more rumor.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp.
Ah, yes. Cooper Kupp. Then we'll talk about the backup quarterbacks, because who cares about backup quarterbacks? It doesn't even matter. I wrote earlier today, I think the Vikings should sign Cooper Kupp. And you're not signing him because you think he's the guy that he was. You're signing him for the guy that he is. And he has a history with Kevin O'Connell. O'Connell knows him. O'Connell likes him. There's a lot of people who are fans of him in this building. And because of that, you can utilize that to maximize what you do. You can utilize that to, like, the continuity there is what you maximize. That's what I'm trying to say. Brain is a little fried. As you can imagine, it's a busy, busy time for me. But having that continuity, like Cooper Kupp isn't just walking into some rando's offense that he's never played for before. He's walking to Kevin O'Connell's offense where he's probably going to know half the verbiage anyways. He already knows the route concepts, and he's not going to have a lot of pressure on him because he's going to be the number 3. And that's not a disrespect thing for him. That's kind of where we're at with Cooper Kupp. He would be the number 3 behind Jefferson and Addison. And I do believe that because of his ability to get open and his ability to block, that's why Trent Sherfield played a decent amount last year. He can block. I've heard a couple people say Cooper Kupp's the best blocking wide receiver they've ever seen. Cooper Kupp is one of the reasons why the Rams were able to run 11 personnel. Him and Puka Nacua can block bigger guys. They can block edge rushers. They can block linebackers. They're not just blocking tiny corners. And because of those elements, then it allows you to stretch the field even more vertically that's like your base look. So it helps you do a lot of different things. Kupp is still really good at getting open underneath, catching the ball at its highest point, winning contested catch battles, and being able to do those things in conjunction with what Jefferson and Addison do. Addison all of a sudden is probably your field stretcher. I would prefer him not to be my field stretcher. I'd prefer to just have a field stretcher, but you have to have somebody in that kind of role, and I think that would be what Addison does. Yeah, but in this scenario, Naylor's not your 3, and we're talking about like that base group of 11 personnel. Naylor is a good player, but I don't trust him to be consistent enough. And to me, that's the biggest reason why I want to look for an upgrade. Plus, you can now argue that the single biggest remaining need on this football team is wide receiver 3 and solidifying that position. Now, when it comes to backup quarterback, I'll just leave it at this. You can go read my article on AtoZSports.com, but backup quarterback, it does not matter who it is. Because if that guy plays, it'll probably be bad. And that's not to be insulting to anybody. Backup quarterbacks aren't supposed to be good. There's a reason why they're backups. So if it's Gardner Minshew or Carson Wentz, whose name I have heard a decent amount. Marcus Mariota just came off the board. I believe Jacoby Brissett did as well. Drew Lock. It doesn't matter who that quarterback is. You don't want them to play anyways. So McCarthy all of a sudden gets hurt. Like, who cares? Doesn't matter. We'll still watch. We'll still try to have fun. But we're not going to pretend like this quarterback's going to be this massive difference maker. I would prefer to target a guy who is going to be the best mentor for McCarthy, who's going to help him learn the finer points of the game. Hey, when you screw up and you read a coverage, or you make a great throw, but it's just off and your mechanics were wonky, that guy's going to help you. And he's going to say, hey, this is what happened. This is what you did. This is what you need to do. Do you understand? Help him out in that way. Like if Ryan Fitzpatrick were still playing, he'd be the first guy I call. Ryan Fitzpatrick, how much to be the backup quarterback for JJ McCarthy? $15 million? Okay. That's a little too much. I'd prefer to be like around 5 to 7. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is the penultimate? Is that the word?
Yes.
Hey, I got it right this time. Go me. He's the penultimate backup quarterback because he's so intelligent. Obviously, the Harvard background, but he's played in so many teams in so many situations. Josh McCown is the same way. I what?
Harvard.
Harvard. You must be a Yale guy. So being able to have somebody who can relate to you on that level. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the fact that Josh McCown is a quarterback's coach, because he's been a journeyman quarterback and he can help you in some of those ways. But still having that guy who's a colleague, because technically McCown is your boss. He's not your colleague. And I do think that matters. I do think that having that bonding relationship, that's why they wanted to pursue Daniel Jones. That's why they got him on the practice squad at the end of the year. That's why they did all these different things in order to try and maximize bringing him back, because they wanted to have him in the building. They wanted to get him experience in the room. They wanted to get him experience in the offense. And then if he end up coming back, all of a sudden, Dave, you're cooking with gas. You've got a guy who's a failure of a top 10 pick who can help guide McCarthy to do things that he struggled with and use that experience to make sure McCarthy does not make those mistakes. But that's just not the reality we live in. Now, you do have guys who were top picks that did bomb out. Trey Lance is one of those guys, but his failures are so weird that I don't think it relates here. Carson Wentz, I think it would be a really good idea for a backup quarterback. And I was hinted that the Vikings could be interested in him. So that's something to at least be aware of. Like top picks who just flamed out. Those are the guys that you would like to have in your room because their experience is going to help. Joe Kane for a backup would be nice. Hell yeah. Nice reference. Joe Kane from ESU, baby. So like to wrap it all up with Cooper Kupp, if he stays healthy, which has always been the problem, he's only had 2 fully healthy seasons, 2019 to 2021. 2021, he won the receiving triple crown. He's had 2 season-ending injuries, 2018 to 2022. I believe 2022 was a back. I know 2018 was a torn ACL. Like, it would be great to be able to have that kind of stability. Will we? I don't know. We'll find out in time. But man, it's
yeah, probably within 24 hours.
It'd be great. It was interesting that all the teams that were supposedly going to be interested in Cooper Kupp, nobody mentioned the Vikings. I think the Vikings are going to have serious interest. And there's been like scuttlebutt that they will have interest.
There's been reports because of the KOC connection.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm hearing like even Green Bay has interest. I hope he doesn't go there. And Green Bay needs wide receivers.
Yeah. Green Bay needs an alpha. Kupp's not an alpha anymore. So to me, the fit's kind of weird. But their biggest issue is, one, they don't have an alpha, and 2, they got the dropsies. Jaden Reed had like a 20% drop rate. Dontavian Wicks, also a really bad drop rate. Christian Watson has dropped quite a few passes too, but he's going to be out with a torn ACL. So now he's Romeo Doubs, and he is on the final year of his deal. So how much are you going to want to pay him? It's interesting.
I think the odds have Kupp going to New England because if he wants to get paid, everybody goes to New England because they have the most cash.
If I were Kupp, I've made a bunch of money. He's made over, I think, $150 million. Or maybe it's a little less because he didn't finish out that last extension. But he got a big extension. Then he got a bigger extension from the Rams. Go where makes you happy. If it's money that makes you happy, go there. If it's I want to play somewhere special, go there. If it's I want to be in warm weather, go there. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him and kind of how that manifests itself. I'm really, really intrigued to see what he does. I'm hoping the Vikings are involved in that because I do think that he would be a really, really good player in that sense. But I do think we should kind of transition because will the Vikings even be able to sign Cooper Kupp because of the salary cap? Oh boy, Dave. The Vikings still have enough room to make a big move or 2 if they want. So let's go over this. The Vikings right now, according to Over the Cap, have $48 million in salary cap space. This does not include Javon Hargrave, Theo Jackson, Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, and the new guy they just signed, Tavier Thomas. He's going to be a vet minimum deal, so he's going to impact this like maybe like $200,000. Because right now the lowest contracts are $840,000. So if he's making like 1 million, just minus $840,000, so it's going to add $260,000 to the cap. That's how that works. So Ryan Kelly, 2 years, $18 million. I'm guessing that they're going to do some funny math with it. That's probably like about $4 million. Will Fries, we don't even know if $88 million is the actual final number because remember, $12 million of that Byron Murphy Jr. contract is incentive based. And that number all of a sudden shrunk to 3 to 54. Jonathan Allen's $60 million went to 3 to 51. And both of those guys don't even combine for more than $13.5 million in cap space as I'm looking at numbers. Jonathan Allen is 6.42. Byron Murphy is 6.94. That's $13.4 million for those two guys on the salary cap. And that's an important factor on the cap. So Fries, let's say it's not too dissimilar to like what Allen's deal is. So let's call it $6 million. So you've got like $6.4 million. And then Kelly is probably going to be around 3 or 4. So let's just call it 4, $10.4 million. And then Javon Hargrave, he's probably going to have the void year thing too. So let's call him another 4. That's under $15 million. So then theoretically, when you look at this, you have $33 million in cap space. We want to set aside about $15 million for your draft class, for your practice squad, and in-season signings. So 33 minus 15, you have $18 million to play with. That's a lot of money to do stuff. That can get you Cooper Kupp. That can get you another corner, maybe Mike Hilton, so you feel comfortable about somebody in the slot. That could get you a safety. That could get you an edge rusher, which I do think the Vikings need to address during free agency. Just get one. Like a Dante Fowler. Like a Joey Bosa could have been cool, but that might have been overkill for kind of where we're at and how much he would actually play. But you still have to do things. They can make another splash move, Dave. They can do that. And I do find that factor very interesting because I think they spent their money. They fixed the trenches, theoretically. And remember, everything's theoretical until it happens. We believe it's fixed. Now they have to go prove it. And it feels good. This is arguably the best trenches we've had since 2009. You've got dudes on the defensive line, edge rusher. You have dudes at tackle. You now have a mean son of a bitch in Ryan Kelly. Dave, you should go on to Imagine, the picture website, and go look at pictures of Ryan Kelly. He looks angry in every single one, like somebody's about to take a cattle prod and hit him in the leg with it. He just got that mean, nasty snarl. I know you really appreciate that as a fan of the Round Bellies. And Will Fries. Like, this is a good group. Blake Brandel's your worst player, and he was very serviceable for most of last year. That's good. Even the 2009 Vikings had Anthony Herrera starting at right guard. He was good. Not great. You never wanted to pay him like buku bucks, but he was a very solid player for you. Solid is good enough when you have that many dudes. You can't have dudes everywhere. That's just not how this game is set up. That's not how the salary cap works. So the fact that the Vikings have all the salary cap space and can do a lot more with it, maybe they decide to like give Tevin Jenkins a 1-year deal to be a mercenary. Hey, come in and we'll give you $10 million. Go play left guard for a year. They could do that if they want. I also think Garrett Bradbury's on the trade block. I know Doogie has mentioned it. It makes a lot of sense. I think Atlanta should be very interested in Garrett Bradbury.
Seattle.
Seattle as well. Well, Atlanta had this, I can't remember, it's Ryan something. It starts with an N, who played when Drew Dahlman got hurt. They didn't tender him. He's a free agent now. The thought was they're going to let Dahlman walk and he's going to take over for a year and they're going to see what they have. And then they'll be aggressive next year to get a center. Well, that's not what they're doing. So it's very curious that they're like not addressing center, at least for now. I don't know. Seattle doesn't. You want Clint Kubiak, the obvious connection there. Seattle does have more draft capital. Atlanta's got 4 picks. So maybe Atlanta can't give you a pick this year, but they can give you a pick next year, which maybe, hey, a 6 this year is a 5th next year. Maybe you can get a 5th next year.
Big says maybe the Colts need Bradbury.
They run too much gap stuff for Bradbury, so I don't think he would be an option. I will say that I think there's a real chance the Vikings keep Bradbury because 1, Ryan Kelly gets hurt, and 2, cutting him only saves you like $3.6 million. You still incur like a bunch of dead cap space, and you need a backup. So maybe you just ride it out with him. Because if Kelly's going to miss 3 or 4 games, having Bradbury as your backup center, that's like the best backup center in football. Unless you're counting like Elton Jenkins, who is probably going to move inside to center now for the Packers, but he's played all 5 positions. They would move him from guard to center to fortify that spot. So keeping Bradbury is not like it could still be an option here, Dave.
Yeah, we've discussed it, both him and Ingram.
And I will say, I was wrong. I think I said yesterday that he's got a trigger in his contract that guarantees some money. That trigger was for last year. Misread it. So he has no guaranteed money. I do think that it might be smart to keep both Bradbury and Ingram through the offseason. Because if you cut him now, or if you cut him at final cut day in August, you save the same amount of cap space. But maybe Ingram's taking a step. Maybe you find a trade partner for Bradbury because the center goes down in August. That happened with the Cleveland Browns. Brown center Ethan Pochich went down. The Seahawks traded Nick Harris back to the Browns.
Or somebody in the draft wants him.
Yeah. There's going to be opportunities for a potential trade. But just like we talked about with Sam Darnold and the franchise tag and the tag and trade, just because you'd like to trade him doesn't mean there's enough of a market to actually do it. And you also have to be careful because if you take too little of a return, that can hinder your negotiations in future deals. So there are things to consider there. But it's very interesting. Last thing I want to talk about, the NFL draft. We're just going to do this briefly because it's already getting close to 7:00. And we're going to have a much wider discussion. The Vikings can do whatever they want in the draft right now. I think they should take a running back, and they should take it with one of their first couple picks. Take a guy in the top 100. But they can do whatever they want. Don't take a quarterback. I don't think that would be very smart. If you had like 9 picks, I'd say, hey, take a flyer on a guy on like day 3, like a Jaren Hall type. Because I think taking shots on those guys is always a good idea. Because you never know when one's going to hit. And then all of a sudden, hey, maybe you get a 2nd round pick for that guy. That sounds pretty good. Or they become your backup and they're a quality backup. And then they're cheap. But they could take, if they decide, because I wrote a mock draft last week, hey, maybe wide receiver is just too good to pass up. We don't need one, but he's far and away the best player on the board. We'll just take it. They have the flexibility to do that because they don't desperately need anything.
Then we kick ourselves in the butt for not trading for Sauce Gardner.
What about Sauce?
We'd kick ourselves in the butt if a wide receiver drops into our lap and we go, oh, we can't stop.
Well, at that point, you can theoretically then move Jordan Addison because you wouldn't be putting yourself in that position. I still wouldn't do it. I would just, hey, now we have all these guys, but then you could potentially move Addison in the next year or two because, hey, maybe they'd choose not to pay him.
Right.
Then you can get a high pick for him. And then I do think that's a fair strategy. I just don't think moving him right now makes a lot of sense. But hey, maybe they like an edge rusher at 24. Take an edge rusher. Who cares?
A linebacker.
The guy I would love is Jahad Campbell, the linebacker. We'll be doing a SKOL search on Jahad Campbell for sure. I love Jahad Campbell. He is built like a brick house. Like 6'3", 240. And he can I heard that he was tested, I think it was by his agents, running like a 4.38. Just insane numbers. He ran like 4.52 at the combine, but the combine track, I don't know if you saw this, was a new turf. It was like cork pellets instead of rubber. So it was different.
I did
and
not
because
see
of that, because of that, it was, you saw a guy slipping a lot. I do think there's almost any position could be in play. If you love a safety, if you love corner, linebacker, defensive tackle, you could still go. Like, you don't have this connection to keep Levi Drake Rodriguez and Jalen Redmond. If somebody beats him out, who cares? Bye. You're going to the practice squad, buddy. Like, you have the flexibility to do that. Take a good football player. That's what they should do with their first pick, because take a good football player that's going to help you long term, and hopefully they help you now. It'd be nice if it was both, right? but take good football players. That's what the Vikings need to be focusing on in the draft. And now that they don't have to force any needs because they fortified all these positions, puts them in a much healthier spot from on a long-term planning perspective. And adofo-mensah has done a fantastic job. He has figured out how to maneuver free agency. He's set himself up for the NFL draft. And I don't necessarily love the Ryan Kelly signing. I'm still a little lukewarm on, but they're making a real effort. And I applaud them. It'd be nice if those free agents were a little younger, but 32 is not a death sentence. 30 is not a death sentence. It's okay. You're not paying these guys for a long time. You're paying them for right now. And I think that's all right.
We can trade for Aaron Rodgers and get even older.
No. With that, we're going to end the show here. Guys, we had over 290 people at one point. Thank you so much. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If we haven't any more breaking news later this week, Dave and I will be going live and you will not want to miss it. That's why you hit that bell in the top right corner. If Aaron Rodgers ends up signing, we're going to be going live. If they make a Cooper Kupp signing, we're going to be going live. So you won't want to miss it. We will be available for you, and we're going to have a lot more.
Gardner trade.
Hey, if that World Series of Poker dude is right, I would be floored. That would be quite the coup. But we're going to be here. We're going to have all kinds of coverage for you here moving forward. There is a Scolders and Spice tomorrow night, Thursday night. Two Old Bloggers is going to be back on Sunday. Thanks to Darren. He's finally done traveling all around the world, dragged without his permission. And he just does not want to miss the show, but he just keeps doing it. It's so weird. I know. We're going to have that. And who knows if there's nothing else going on, maybe Dave and I can start up our SKOL Search series on Friday. We'll kind of see how the week plans out. And we're going to have a lot of fun covering this Minnesota Vikings team. Free agency, they're good. This is a good football team. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Give us a 5-star review on your podcast aggregator of choice. And give us a like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!